one thing that AFS is most important for me, it is that it is a network of like-minded people, meaning we are all interested in intercultural relations. We are there because we think we can somehow contribute to peace, to human rights, to democracy. And to be an ambassador and go around the world and realize that in 88 countries you have an AFS office that you can contact and you have immediate friends is something fantastic. The process that AFS starts in every person that is out in a new environment, be it a new family, a new school, a new country, a new language, it makes such an impression on you that you must become interested in international affairs, in intercultural affairs.
When I was there, and about the same time, I was there 65, 66 in Dayton, Ohio. I mean, those days, this was before, as you know, before the internet, before the time when you called, really. I mean, how many times did I speak to my parents during that year? 3, 4, 5 times, perhaps. You wrote letters, ordinary letters that you sent by mail. So coming to another country and living and breathing and being part of that culture, it really opened up the world. I mean, in a very concrete way. And I still have contact with my sisters and brothers. I mean, actually, we mailed each other yesterday. And they were here when my son got married last year. All of them came to visit us. We have to have a dialogue. We have to have an understanding. We have to have, as both President Ahtisaari and John Eliasson said, we have to have this cultural sensitivity so we can communicate, because otherwise we come across as very arrogant, not all of us, of course, but some of us, very arrogant and very uptight, but if with the cultural sensitivity, we can really make wonders.
This is something that we live with. We live with these reference points in the form of people that we met, and we are in some sort of constant dialogue with them, I think, when we are abroad, and so that's the international dimension. But then I also think we should, if the focus here is not only on intercultural learning, so to say, but also on an AFS here, I think the personal dimension is often as important. In my particular case, I was someone who went to America with a severe stammering problem. And when I came home, I suddenly realized that I did not stammer anymore. And stutter, yes. And I had basically forgotten that during my year in America. And thinking about that in retrospect, I'm not really sure what happened, but I think there are many dimensions of this. I grew, I could start all over in some ways, and I matured, and that. And for me, that was probably the most important concrete thing that happened to me during that year. I mean, a year like that in that age in a family is much, much, much more than language training. We usually say that this is was the most important year of my life. I know that John and I had said that in several panels where we've been on this, and I think that's the case for most of us.
Getting back to what President Ahtisaari said about the need for youngsters, and what also John Eliasson talks about, the need for young people to get to study abroad, to get to university, get a good education. We have to have a leadership, a well-educated leadership with a cultural knowledge outside of their own world. And how do we get that?
If we want AFS to be really important, it is, of course, a change of your life if you go from Sweden to the US like I did. But I think we participate much more in international building of bridges if somebody goes from east to west, if you say it like that. If somebody comes from a Christian religion and lives in a Muslim home and the other way around, then we are really building up some relationships that become important on a world level.
But I think it is important, and especially for AFS, that it starts from high school, and then when you are in a university, the same thing happens. I don't think it matters so much where you go, as long as you go, because from that your contacts emerge, and your curiosity to the world. You follow the events of the world in a total. You become. Why did we become internationalists? Because we have had this opportunity to have these contacts from.
I think in Sweden, actually, the last 10 years, there are more people that work with non-profit organizations today than was 10 years ago. So, I mean, there are more people becoming, that are interested in actually spending time with doing volunteer work or work with organizations that work with, you know, human rights or development or whatever it might be, or the Red Crosses I have done. And so I think that on the one hand, yes, you have more individualistic, more people that want to become program managers in the television.
We can like meetings too, you know.
But then you also have all the other people that are really interested, and also the program leaders in television. They're interested in actually working to get a better world, because that's what we're doing. We want the world to be a little better when we leave it than when we came. Simple as that. We want to contribute to our societies and contribute also to the greater international society to make a difference. You know, that's what we want to do. And I think there are more people having those feelings today and expressing those feelings than we had some years back.
What I think we have to realize is that today's problem is so multifaceted and complex that we simply have to mobilize all actors, anyone who can influence the problem. We should put the problem in the center, and clean water is a real problem, by the way. And then we should ask ourselves who are affected by this problem. And then secondly, who can affect the problem. Then we should mobilize everybody around that problem and mobilize all action. And this means that nobody can get away from responsibility. There's a Swedish impression that I think I've coined myself. I said, någon annanism. You have to avoid that someone else does it. And by doing that, you realize that, okay, with climate and environment, you need to have the UN, the European Union, the governments, the industry, the private sector, the non-governmental organizations, science, research, you and me. Nobody can do everything, but everybody can do something. And that's again where AFS comes in, because then you bring the individual action into the larger perspective.
You know, the interchange doesn't solve the world. You know, doesn't give us world peace, obviously, because the contradictions, the cultural differences, the economic differences, and the political differences are there. And what AFS, on the other hand, can do is that it with all the people that travels around the world, with all the internationalists that AFS fosters, with all the people with the cultural understanding that AFS fosters, we get people like Jan Eliasson doing work in the Foreign Office, and others of us that are doing work wherever we have been, you know, where we are acting, and we actually can do things, and we can influence our politicians. I mean, not only in this country, but in other countries, to see to it that there is a greater world, and that their national interests are aligned with good solutions.